Hey, Monica, did you know it's now even easier to listen to Round the Hay Bale podcast?
What? Really? How easy?
That's right. All you have to do is say, Alexa, play Round the Hay Bale podcast.
Playing Round the Hay Bale podcast on Apple Music.
Ooh, we fancy.
Tune in to Round the Hay Bale every Monday at 9 a.m. Central. Round the Hay Bale Unscripted is brought to you by, with gardening season in full bloom, Cayce certified organic products are just what your garden needs.
From fertilizing your orchards to feeding your soil, Cayce's calcium-based fertilizer gives your plants the essential minerals they need to thrive.
Applying Cayce to agricultural soils and waters has been proven to increase plant and crop yields while making vegetables and grains healthier and more nutritious.
In addition, Cayce can help restore the nutrient balance in animals when they're fed plants grown using Cayce in both soil and water.
To check out all of Cayce's organic products, visit cayce.com and use our promo code HAYBALE for 10% off of your purchase.
Grab a cup of joe and gather round the hay bale with your hosts, Alicia from Country Mama Musings, Cayce from Ormsby Farms, and Monica from Bland's Promised Land Ranch. Now, here they are. Hey, y'all. Hey.
Hey, y'all. Hey, welcome back to another episode of Round the Hay Bale Unscripted Season 4. I'm Alicia.
And I'm Monica.
What's up, y'all? It's the fifth wheel Cayce, and y'all will understand why I'm saying that because tonight's episode is actually really exciting for me. I'm not going to joke. We have the husbands from Bland's Promised Land Ranch and Country Mama Musing. We have Eric and Papa Jim on the podcast tonight. So we are talking all things safety. And why not have my beautiful co-host, significant other, discussing this topic. And as we're sitting here shooting, one of our co-hosts has decided to leave the studio. Oh, he's back. Thank you for joining us. So welcome, Eric and Papa Jim.
Hi, guys.
Thanks for having me.
It's funny. I wish our listeners could see what's happening right now. It's like the women are pointing at the husband. Okay, you talk now. So this is completely foreign to them. So this is exciting for us, but I think maybe just a little bit of a I don't know. We didn't give them much notice they were coming on to the show today. But Cayce, I'm going to go ahead and let you start this. You were rolling in before I cut you off. What kind of safety issues do you think we're going to ask the men today?
Well, I think when we were talking about this episode, I think one thing that I've learned in the short amount of time that I've been on my homestead is always being prepared. And I think talking both with Monica and Alicia, one thing that I decided of having Eric and Papa Jim on is because they're always saying, oh yeah, well, Papa Jim has this plan, or yes, oh yeah, Eric has planned this to make sure that we're ready in case there's a national disaster, or there's a tornado, or a hurricane, or a blizzard, or your power goes out. And the one thing that we talk about is, are you prepared? As we jokingly say, like Andel says, are you ready to jump into action if something was to happen? If your power's to go out right now, are you ready to jump in and find your candles or find your heating source or whatever it may be? And so we decided, let's bring in the pros. Let's bring in the husbands, the Bland's Promised Land Ranch husband and the Country Mama Musing husbands, and get their opinion and get their advice on what they think our listeners should do to prepare for these type of things. So I'm going to pass it on to, let's see, who looks the most nervous? Oh, I'm going to pass it on to Eric first.
That was so kind of you.
I'm not really sure what visual I was giving you to think that I was nervous, but I'm not nervous. I'm all things safety all the time. I am studied up and ready to roll.
Okay, so what do you have to add? I mean, what's one of the things that we do here that you feel like is one of the safety measures we have in place on the farm?
Well,
I think it's important to make note of that. We have a different type of farm than our co-hosts have here. Alicia doesn't have a lot of little kids on the farm all the time. She does have, they do have grandkids that come to visit, but it's not an every day that they have children on their farm. Cayce right now, he doesn't have little kids on his farm. It's him and his dog and his mom every now and then. So his safety plans may be different than ours. Now we have a bunch of kids and younger people on our farm. So what kind of safety plans do you think are, what kind of safety measures do we have here in relation to our children and our large family?
Well, I think the underlying message that you always have to push for is to be prepared and think ahead. So in other words, it's not very often that you encounter emergency type situations. So that's why you should always practice and be prepared ahead of time. So that in the event that something does take place, you're automatically in motion or automatically in movement to protect yourself, protect those around you, whatever it may be. And the thing is that with us, especially having small kids and then also domesticated animals, and what I mean by that is, when they're domesticated, they come around you. They're constantly surrounding you, whether it be the birds or cats, dogs, whatever it may be. You have to take all that in consideration so that as you're planning out the project that you're working on, you already know the things that you need to be watching for.
Okay. So I know one of the things that we like to do here on the farm is we always are really try to make sure our kids are situationally aware. We try to make sure that they're aware of like you said, the project that they're working on. They're aware of what outcome they want, but also they're aware of what could kind of go wrong. We do have, animals that are outside protecting our children when they're out there and we're not right there next to them. We also make sure that they're situationally aware. We have large animals. And so one of the ways we try to keep our family safe is by making sure that they know their boundaries and they know their animals. I think that's super important when we talk about safety and being prepared. You need to know the animals that you have, the animals that you're dealing with. My 7-year-old is not going to just walk up to a large cow. They're not going to, even though some of our cattle are really nice, they know the safety precautions. They know you're not going to walk up around the backside of it. They know that when you come up on a large animal, you're going to walk up slowly. They have those things. We've kind of taught them those procedures. Now, I know this is kind of outside of some of the other safety things people think of, but it's important for us when we have a large family to think about those safety precautions because it's absolutely devastating to see your kid get injured by a large animal. Abigail, our daughter, she ended up getting hit in the face by our horse. We had only had the horse for a couple months. We'd only been in Texas for a few months, and she was petting the horse on the side of it, up by its, head, by its side. She was doing what she should. And my son offered him a piece of straw or hay. And as he kind of flicked it at his nose, it spooked that horse something fierce. And when it did, Abigail dropped down because she was getting pushed into. She dropped to her knees, went down to the ground in a fetal position. And as the horse jumped kind of over her body, he clipped her face, her mouth with its hoof. He busted her lip straight open, tore it off, like part of it. And she ended up having like 6 stitches, I think. And at that point, I feel like that's one of those points where I realized these animals are huge. Our kids need to be aware of each animal they're dealing with. So that's part of our safety plan, is really making sure that our kids know what animal they're dealing with, how they're going to deal with it, and how they're going to maneuver themselves and each other, and how to help each other when they're around those animals. Alicia, do you have something you want to add to that?
I do. I think it's important whether you're dealing with children on the homestead, guests on the homestead, or yourself on the homestead. You have to remember that, again, they're animals. They're going to be unpredictable. And just when you think you've got it all figured out, what you didn't think would happen is going to possibly happen. You have to think of every parameter. So from, going forward, just based on Abigail's situation, dropping to the ground was really pretty smart. But if the kids get it in their head, when I drop, I've got to cover my face. It becomes an instant thing. And maybe you just didn't think of that. And you don't know what to think when things hit that quickly. It's an instant reaction to just do what you do, but you don't put those extra thoughts into place. With regards to animals here, I used to spend a lot of time with the animals down in the barn and out in the fields. And then after my health diagnosis, when I went through my cancer, I could not trust myself around the animals because if they did something innocuous, I didn't have the strength to protect myself. So we made that a rule here on the farm. I don't go down into the field with the large animals unless somebody's here with me. I don't go out into the chicken coop even, which, chickens, okay, they're birds, and the roosters have been really great. They don't attack me or anything. But we have our potbelly pig that lives with the chickens. And he has, what do you think, 3-inch tusks?
Yeah.
And if I were to fall, if I were to lose consciousness, if I were to trip, if I were to be cornered, I'm putting myself in danger if I'm here on the homestead by myself. If he would never, I don't believe, here I say, be prepared. I don't think he would ever intentionally attack me. But if his instincts kicked in and he felt he was threatened, he could very easily come after me.
Right.
So we've made that.
Yeah. And I think that you always should have foresight of having like escape plans. Like if you're inside the coop or somewhere where where you have an exit out, that you don't put yourself in a corner too.
Share with everybody what happened when we brought that turkey home, our first turkey. Do you remember what happened? When you put the turkey in and you got trapped and it was dark? You don't remember?
I don't remember. I don't.
I had brought home a turkey and we were going to release it into the coop at nighttime so it could assimilate. And the pig revolted. Do you remember? Is it coming back to you? Papa Jim had to jump up on the roosting poles.
Now it's starting to come back.
The trauma is starting to come back. Papa Jim had to jump up onto the roosting poles. We have landscape timbers for roosts. He jumped up on there to keep the pig from attacking him because the door got shut and he was shut in there with this pig who was freaking out in the dark. And we had a light coming in through one of the windows and he said, kill the light until everybody calms down.
So I was perched with the chickens.
He was perched with the fowl while the pig was looking for anything. I mean, he was trying to escape. It was dangerous because of those tusks. So that's just one thing to think about. We didn't think that would happen. We didn't know, but you have to, again, like Monica said, be situationally aware. There was no out. There was no other way to get out. So he was kind of stuck. But now we know that was a good reminder for us to realize that as much as we love that pig, I wanted to say little pig, but he probably weighs 200 pounds. I mean, we've had him since he was 6 weeks old. We love him. But instinct will take over, and he thought he was threatened. So, Cayce?
Well, I was going to say to that is I've heard y'all tell both of these stories a couple times right before I got my animals on the farm. I don't have big animals on the farm. The only big animals that I would say I have on the farm is my brother and sister-in-law. And most of the time, leashes can take care of them if anything goes down. Love y'all, Chris and Tara. But no, I've noticed, especially now that I've had the chickens and turkeys for the 12 weeks that I've had, is that when I first let my chickens and turkeys, and again, they're not that big, when I let them out together, and for those that follow me know that they do not like each other. The turkeys and chickens do not like each other. It was a brawl of chickens literally pinning down turkeys by the neck to the ground, blood drawn. And you have to think on your feet, like, what do I do? How do I, because you don't want any of because as Eric always says, everything on the homestead is on the payroll. So these turkeys are on my payroll and I can't let them die because then I'm losing money. So you have to have your plans of what do I do? How do I jump in? How do I separate, these animals? Because it's a lot easier separating your brother and sister-in-law if they're fighting than it is a turkey and a chicken.
You
And
think
my
so, but you're
co-host-
going to get it. You're going to get it.
Oh,
You know
yeah.
that, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I'm ready for it. But seeing my co-host react to me saying that. But no, I think it is so important to make sure that you have a plan set in place on what you do if an animal goes rogue or an animal goes a little cray cray, as we say here on the homestead. Alicia?
We're Eric.
Well, I think that goes back to what I had mentioned previously about being prepared. In your preparation, it's not necessarily, it's like any emergency, really, in any kind of type of work that you do, whether you're working with electricity, air conditioning, plumbing, you're carrying things like ladders or chainsaws or anything like that. You kind of, before you get started, you always want to kind of run through your mind the different scenarios so that in the event that something starts to go the wrong direction, you can kind of correct the ship, so to speak, before you have a full-blown emergency. And that's kind of, when you're running, for us each year, maybe twice a year, certainly once a year, we take all of our cattle through the chute. And when we have all the cattle through the squeeze chute or on our property at that point in time, we're talking about 30 head of cattle. Well, when we get them into the corral, it's very similar to what you see on those old Western movies where we're getting them all down into the corral. It's all dusty. There's a lot of excitement. Everybody's kind of getting into it. And it's very easy to put yourself in a situation where when the adrenaline is pumping, that you start making decisions that are based upon what you've seen, like something on TV. So in other words, you see like a large cow, full-grown cow, or even one of the bulls that decides they don't want to go in the corral. They decide to do an about face and start walking towards you. And I've had some of our people where they put their hands up and they start whistling and shouting at them like they do in the movies. And I'm like, bro, that don't work. If they don't want to go that direction, they're not going. The only way that you can stop them is one of two ways. And that's either with treats or you have a dog. And that dog will turn them around. That's why we have our cattle dogs. But, you have somebody when you're doing work like that, where you have an overseer, so to speak, where they're kind of just monitoring everybody and the safety levels and helping to bring that to attention to say, hey, I want to make sure that by standing in front of that cow, that was a bad idea, so that they don't do that again. And remind them, you know what, if they get out of the chute and we don't give them what they need, whether it be, wormer or whatever, it's better for you to be safe than worry about that cow and having to run them back through the chute. And I think that's what happens a lot of times is people want to try to stop. Their instinct is to try to stop 1,000-pound, 2,000-pound animal by putting their hand out or standing in front of them thinking that's going to work. And it doesn't. And then ultimately that leads to injuries.
Or chasing a truck. Alicia,
or chasing a 2,000-pound truck. I
did you
knew
have something you
Monica
want to
started
say?
giggling. I knew it was going to come to me. You're right, Eric. You live to fight another day, and your instincts take over. And that recently happened to me, and it's crazy because it's something that Papa Jim and I have discussed. We've implemented some things here on the farm that I'll turn over to Papa Jim here in a second, but. Yeah, I failed to put the truck in park, and it started rolling down an alley towards a brand new, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 truck. And I thought I could chase it. I thought I could run after it and stop it. And looking back now, I realize that's totally. I can barely
Y'all,
get
this
in the
is a
truck when
true
it's in a
story,
dead
by
stop.
the way.
Alicia
Listeners,
thought
this is
Alicia's
a
the
true story.
gazelle.
She's Superwoman.
She was like, I'm a gazelle. Let's do this. And she was
No, I was running with little corgi legs, and my fat self couldn't keep up, and I face planted. But I have trouble getting up in the truck when it's in park in the driveway, let alone chasing it going down the street. But we discussed that when I was going to say when I came home, but no, when I got out of the emergency room. And Papa Jim says, you're really fortunate that you didn't catch the truck, because you would have tried to climb in the truck and you would have been pulled over and it would have run you over. Yeah, you'd be pulled under the vehicle. It would have run you over.
Once you got one foot planted and you're trying to get the inside, your foot that's planted is going to pull back and you're going to go fall underneath the truck and you're going to get run over. And it's not.
And he said that's why we have insurance. So keep in mind if you've got your homeowner's insurance on your homestead, or at your home or on your
car
vehicles.
insurance or whatever. It's not worth risking yourself to invert unless you see damage coming up. Like if somebody's standing in front of the truck, then yes, you probably want to try try to get them out of the way. But
If there were children in that alleyway, I would have been devastated if they would have been harmed. But we had a recent reminder of this because just a week and a half ago, someone here locally where we live, their trailer had become unhitched off of their truck. And they jumped out of the vehicle to try to wrangle it. How old was this individual? 23 years of age. The trailer ran her over and killed her right here in our community. So, crushing injuries are something that we've discussed here on the farm, and I'm going to turn this over to Papa Jim for a minute because he has an important message about working here on the farm, on your homestead, with regards to the fact that he bought me a really great mower. And then he came home one day and said, this is a new thing we're implementing at the farm. Why don't you share with us, Papa Jim?
all right, so we had an incident that happened probably locally, yeah. One of my coworkers, it was related to them that their wife was doing a new mower, zero turn, and she got too close to our ditches in our area are pretty deep along our gravel roads, and it actually went over on her, and it rolled over on and killed her. And so now we have a rule that Alicia's country mom is no longer allowed to be mow near the ditches, especially if I'm not home. But no, she's not allowed at all around the ditches. So
Yeah, and before that, it was always my routine to mow on a Thursday. I would go out Thursday morning. I would mow while he was at work. He'd come home and everything would be beautifully mowed and the yard would look nice. Now, more than ever now, really. I mow on a weekend when he's here because if something should happen, and this is a much larger mower than the little ride-on mower we had before. This is one of those big zero-turn mowers. And I will admit, it's got that like what's that bar? That safety bar?
the roll bar.
A roll bar safety bar that I'm not used to. And twice now I've caught myself on something and almost flipped over backwards. So it's important for me to realize I'm dealing with a new beast. New safety things had to be put into place, and you don't think it's going to fall over.
And that's
crush
another
you.
thing too is that you have to and realize your awareness of stuff around you, and when you're operating equipment that you're not used to. So you need to just be more cautious too.
Yeah, because it can be deadly. I mean, you think you're mowing the lawn. Who thinks they're going to die mowing the lawn? But it happens. Eric?
Eric doesn't mow the lawn. He doesn't think he's going to die mowing the lawn here. He makes the boys do it.
But his finger's up on his nose, which means he wants to say something.
So I tried, but our boys here at the farm won't do it.
Won't do what?
Mow the grass.
They mow it like they're racing in the Indy 500.
They won't even they won't even come. The only time they come over is when I have to work on their car.
They mowed while I was going through chemo.
Oh, true.
And instead of doing the pretty
you can see the
designs, you could see the hot laps that they were running.
You can see when the mower was going so fast that the blade turned a little bit, and you can see the deep groove.
Not safe. Not safe. Eric, what were you going to say about mowing?
I'll just make a quick comment. And, when I came through tech school, the number one rule that they mentioned to us, I'm sure Papa Jim understands this being a mechanic, is priority one is safety. And that's always the key. As you said, you live another day if you don't do stupid stuff. If you try to take matters into your own hands, especially when it's, something that could be detrimental to your health. It's going to impact you one way or the other, whether it's something that's just going to hinder you the rest of your life or possibly end your life, which then impacts everybody else around you if you have kids, grandkids, spouses, things like that.
Cayce?
Exactly. Cayce?
Well, I think it's funny that we're talking about the mowing the lawn and who are the ones that mow the lawn, because there is a rule here at Ormsby Farm, because I seem to be the one that is always in front of the cameras for our listeners know, we're all YouTubers. We all do the YouTube, Instagram stuff. So I'm usually shooting the videos, editing, canning, and my mother is the one who prefers and enjoys to mow the lawn. But there is a rule that she is not allowed to mow unless I am physically on this property. If I am at church or if I'm at a meeting or if I am in town, that mower I have actually done where I've taken the key from our driving mower because we are so far in the sticks, and both Monica, Eric, Alicia, Papa Jim, we all know that getting to either a hospital or something it's hard when you live in the boonies, the boons. So I'm shouting out to the people that are single homesteaders. I'm the single homesteader here on this homestead. Even if you don't have someone that you live with or kids or a family member that comes over, maybe invite a friend over, maybe a church friend that comes over and invite them to have lunch while you're mowing. I don't know. That sounds really ridiculous, but you shouldn't. I know the Blands are laughing at me. Y'all can see in the studio, but
Even if you just alert your neighbor.
alert your neighbor.
Thursday.
So it's just not so
Alert your neighbor.
So you don't have a lawnmower on top of you, and you're doing the ABCs trying to figure out who you should have called.
Right. Just let somebody know.
Right. Okay. I'm passing it off now.
We just thought you were so cute because you were like, invite your friend over if you're going to mow and say, hey, come watch me mow in case I die. Like,
First of all, I've done that, actually. I have really done that. So I have done that, and it was a church friend, and I said, hey I am by myself on the homestead. Yes, and they still go to the church.
Okay, that's good. Well, then good.
Either they're desperate or they have no other friends. But thank you,
then
Brandy,
that's your
that's
mowing
listening.
church friend. And I love that. And you know what? Hey, shout out to you, mowing church friend. Church friend that just watched Cayce mow, shout out to you because you are a true friend. Because I'm going to tell you right now, Cayce's on the mower. I'm on my phone. I'm not watching his little booty mow the yard.
No, she actually got to use my canners. She wanted to learn how to can. I taught her how to can, so she was canning in the kitchen.
So you
while
bartered her time.
It was a quid pro quo.
Oh,
that's what it was.
On the homestead.
That way.
It was a homestead barter. You come here and be my person.
Mm-hmm.
Use my equipment while I mow my lawn in case I roll the vehicle. And there you go. See, and I think that the whole idea
your husband's an EMT, so I mean, I'm smart, so I know what I'm doing.
Bonus. Right. Good job.
Much.
I take back my laughter. Well, I take back half my laughter. The rest of it's still there.
No, you don't.
Just
lies.
I want to continue on with the reality of on the homestead or in the workplace, the real danger of crushing injuries. Because now that I think about it, I mean, I could have been pulled under that vehicle. We just had the young lady in our neighborhood that was pulled under her vehicle. But now that I think about it, I mean, we knew a young family that had a blueberry farm. And their wife was crushed by their tractor. It wasn't properly parked, and she was standing in front of it in the barn, and it rolled forward and crushed her. And then Papa Jim knows somebody down in the community where he, one of his former jobs, and a car came off of a rack or something and rolled forward and crushed that man right past the corner there. That old man that had the historical cars.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so he was crushed.
Yeah, he was crushed. And when I was a young man, at the dealership I was working at, I had a car that slid off the hoist, and my natural reaction was to catch it to keep it from sliding. And my service manager came over, and we got the car situated, and then I got in trouble for trying to catch the car, not because the car was coming off the rack, but I caught the corner of it, and it was teetering. Oh, yeah. And so
that could have ended badly with 4 babies at home.
Right. That's when I was a young man and had all the responsibility of all those kids.
And thought you were invincible.
But I see it. My first thought was that, hey, the car's coming off. I'm going to get in trouble. And if I get fired, I can't provide for my family. And so, but it's, you're not going to stop a 4,000-pound car.
Monica?
Well, I think in all of this, really what we're getting at is if you don't have a plan, or if you're not situationally aware, if you don't have a plan, an exit plan for accidents or things like that, you just need a plan for safety in general on your farm. Anywhere on your homestead, things can happen. Whether you're, out front sitting on the porch, whether you're going to pick up something at a friend's house or whatever it is, things can happen no matter where you are. And you're right. Alicia made a good point. It was just sheer instinct. We hadn't talked to Abigail about, hey, if the horse ever, bucks, we didn't talk to her about a plan to get away from a horse bucking or something happened. We never discussed it because it was never a thing. We didn't think about it. But I feel like when we first got here, we didn't understand the realities of farming and homesteading. We didn't get it that things could happen because when we got here, everything that could possibly happen happened right away. I mean, literally my son, within 4 days of us arriving to Texas, within 2 days of us arriving to Texas, he gets his face crushed into, like his nose literally crushed into his face. We had only been here for 48 hours and we have a major injury.
Which child was this?
That was Caleb, my oldest. But the thing is, in all of that, we learned how to get to the hospital very quickly after these accidents. But that's one thing I never thought about because here I am, a city girl, calling 911 and they're like, yes, what's your address? And I tell them my new address that I had just learned and it was on my mortgage papers. And I'm looking at my address and they're like, what county? And I said, oh, Hunt County. Oh, okay, hold on. That's Kaufman. Let me send you over. What? So they sent me to another county. It took 20 minutes on the phone with 911 before they could finally send someone from fire and rescue. And because we're in the country, there's only one fire department with EMT, and they were on a fire call. So when they finally got there, 50 minutes after my son's nose is completely smashed into his face with a dolly, the hand truck, we put weight down, the hand truck gets flipped into his face, smashed his nose completely into his face. The fire department gets there and they've got ashes on them because they just came from a fire. Like that is the reality of living on a farm. You need to know how to get from your farm to emergency care and how to care for them while they're on your homestead in the meantime to keep them alive. We have our own first aid kits. I know you all do. I know everybody has these first aid kits, but that's really important to have that too. We have all these disaster plans, but how do you actually respond to it when it happens? And thankfully we've had accidents, but we've had accidents and we know how to get to the hospital, but we also know how to maintain before we get to the hospital. So I think that's really important to discuss too, because sometimes you don't know a disaster or you don't know a thing's going to happen until it happens. And they're like, oh my gosh, I never would have thought this would have happened.
Well, everybody knows if you walk and step on a rake, it's going to come up and smack you in the face. Nobody expects it with a hand truck. It's one of those things that you're just
prepared for. You're just moving boxes and thankfully he had just put his glasses on about 20 minutes prior. We got home from dinner. It was kind of late. We were moving a few things in and thankfully we got home and he put his glasses on because the nurse said, yeah, if you hadn't had your glasses on, that hand truck, that dolly would have probably blown out right there in your eye sockets because the dolly had imprinted the paint transfer to his glasses. So his glasses probably saved his eyes, but it's one of those things that you don't think of something like that happening. And, immediately he goes into his, I'm 14 years old. I've seen a lot of Bear Grylls. So he's like, I could have paint. I could have bone fragments in my face. And I'm like, settle down. We're going to get through this. And it's important to at least go through some things in your head. Make sure you have first aid kits. Make sure you're aware of how to get to the hospital. Make sure you know that if you live in the boonies, in the boondocks, whatever you want to call it, you better know how to get to the hospital and how to maintain what your people or your animals until you can get to the hospital. Because I had no idea it would take, 30 minutes to get to the hospital. 20 if Eric's driving, but 30 if the average person is driving.
Right. And, speaking of living on the homestead, and I want to continue one more thing with this little avenue that I'm going down with crushing injuries, because I'd mentioned that there were several that I've been made aware of that make me think differently about how I interact here on the homestead is straw or hay. It's lightweight. It doesn't weigh a lot. You think it's straw, right? Not a big deal. But there was a young lady that her mother, I think, returned back to the farm, and this was somewhere local here. And while the mother was gone from the farm, the daughter was out in the barn, and she was moving some things around. and one of those big roll bales of hay started moving, and the daughter thought she could stop it, and it plowed her into the pipe fencing for the corral, and it crushed her. She suffocated because it was so heavy with pushing her up against the fence. She couldn't inhale. She couldn't breathe. And they found her that way, deceased. And I thought, I wouldn't think hay would do that. But even if you stack your bales of hay, you're in very real danger of.
But the round hay bales, they're excessive weight.
They are, but I don't think people think they're excessive weight. You just think it's hay. It can't be that heavy.
Yeah, no, it's
it can be deadly.
They're at least 1,000 pounds. You're dealing with a lot of weight. Yeah.
But I want to get back on with like the first aid kits and stuff. Even if everybody knows where the first aid kit is, do they know how to use stuff in it? And I think that's important. Another thing too is fire extinguishers. If you have a fire extinguisher on the farm, does the kids know how to use it? Is it worth maybe getting a fire extinguisher from a box store and burning one just to show them you pull the pin, aim it, sweep it, just that kind of stuff? Because like you're saying, Monica, that when you live that far away from everything, I mean, you might be able to stop something before it's catastrophic and before the fire department comes out.
The other thing is too is based on Monica's story is make sure that the numbers for where you live is clearly visible from the road. We have a little blue and white reflective sign that has our street number. It's on this side of the ditch, but I mean, we're on a gravel road. And one day it had fallen, and it's like, no big deal. Everybody knows where we live, and the people who need to know where we live, they know where we live. Nobody needs to know that number. But if we had an emergency, that emergency crew needs to know that number, even though there's only 2 houses on this block. So we fixed that. You have to make sure that the weeds are mowed around that area so emergency services can see it. And we've recently picked up some reflector sticks so we can put the reflector sticks in the entranceway. So if we had to call 911 at nighttime, we could say there are 2 blue reflectors at the entrance of the driveway, because it's pitch black out here. And even with lights and sirens and everything, if we had to have emergency services show up, I think it's a whole heck of a lot better for them to be a quarter of a mile away and say, there are the 2 blue reflectors. That's where we're going to turn in. Eric, you want to add to this? He does. He's making fun of me.
Well, he's making fun of Cayce, actually, because every time Casey's wanted to talk, Eric has tried to get your attention so that he could talk first. And it's worked.
Well, sometimes
so
when I mute my mic, it pops up the screen and it blocks part of Casey's face. I'm sorry. Cayce, what do you want to say?
Well, no, I was just going to say, I was kind of piggyback on what you were saying, because it is important to know how to use stuff in the first aid, because we are so far away from, in the sticks, I will say that, in the sticks, we are so far away from any like emergency minute clinic or whatever you want to call it. But also you need to know how to use it if you have visitors. I have been so lucky that I've had both Monica and the kids and Alicia and Papa Jim visit my homestead. And if you're not knowledgeable on how to use something in case an emergency happens, you're kind of out of luck on how to use certain things. Now, I will say for some people that know me, my degree is LPN, so nursing, but you do need to know how to use certain things in your first aid until the professionals get there, which could be, as Monica said, 50, 60 minutes. I mean, we live in a town here in Southeast Georgia where all of our firefighters, EMT, are volunteer. They just asked me personally if I wanted to be a volunteer firefighter and EMT because they know me because of social media. That's scary, first of all. Anybody living in Sparta, make sure you say no to Cayce being a firefighter. But make sure that you know these type of things, because living in the homestead, it's not for the weak of hearts. I mean, you're not in the city. You're not 10 minutes away from the local hospital. So learn what you need to do, right, Monica? I mean, I think you think I know that you're agreeing with me on this. Y'all, we have this chat when we're recording, and I'm trying to focus and be professional, and we have this personal chat going on behind the scenes.
Look, I agree with everything you're saying, and I will say that recently, one of my boys, my 13-year-old, so I order things. I am an avid Amazon shopper, and I always order things to add to my kit. And apparently Papa Jim is an fellow Amazon shopper. So here's the thing. I add to my first aid kit every chance I get. And after we've had a couple things where people have, cut themselves or whatever, I bought a book for sutures, and I added a homemade, a suture kit, like how to do it. So I was really excited. And then I bought one of these quick sutures where you can put it on the line, and then you just pull the thing. And I'm trying to show you, but you can't see because it's a podcast, but you pull the little plastic straps, and it
like a zip tie.
Yes, but it is plasticky, and you seal it up. And oh my goodness, my son was taking out the garbage a few months ago, and there happened to be a glass jar that shattered. He was taking out the trash, and for whatever reason, he decided he was going to swing the trash, because that's what 13-year-old boys do. And he was swinging the trash back and forth.
Correct.
He swung the trash. It blew past his leg and got him right above the knee on the side of his leg. Well, let me just tell you, it was a pretty good gash. Okay. I'm going to call it a gash, because we could see there was flesh underneath that was looking a little like tissue. And I'm like, wow, that's a pretty deep gash. So immediately I'm like, yes, I can go get my
victory.
Okay, listeners. So
I knew it was more than a Band-Aid. Okay. I was like, oh, we're going to have to go get the sutures. So I immediately run into my first aid kit. I grab the first aid stuff, and immediately I know I am going to fix this child. I don't need the urgent care. I don't need the ER. I got this. So I try it. It doesn't stick right. So I clean it off again. He's bleeding. He's not bleeding out. He's fine. And I tried a second time. I waste 2 of them. Still not working. Finally get the third time. I get it going. He's propping his leg up. He's icing it. Everything looks good. It looks like it's sticking. And then about 30 minutes later, he's like, Mom, I think it stopped bleeding. It's looking good. I zip tied it, all that stuff. And then it still was bleeding. And so we ended up having to take him to the ER. And I told the urgent care guy when we got there, I said, well, here's the thing. Okay. I tried to zip tie him up with the little thingy that I bought. And I told the guy what I bought. And he said, actually, Mom, he said, you'd have been fine with that if that hadn't have been on a bend of his knee, because it was the side of his knee right above right above the kneecap. So it was on a bendy part of the side of his leg. He said, if that had been about 1.5 inches higher on his thigh, you'd have been golden. I was like, yes. So it was really cool that I got the urgent care doctor's kind of approval to try it again. So I'm like, who's going to cut themselves next? Nobody will cut themselves. And the next person that cut themselves did it in their head, and I couldn't seal it up with glue. It needed a stitch or a staple. But I do have the staple.
I was going to say, we won't say what Papa Jim closes his wounds up with.
Well, I do have the staple gun now, and I have a staple remover, just so we can be sure. We do have a stapler, but that's one of the things I think Eric wanted to add to that.
Monica, I was about to say, make sure, Monica, that you clarify that it is not a staple gun that you get from the Home Depot. That is a little different
this
to our viewers. Okay.
Yes, this is a medical staple gun that you can get on Amazon, FYI.
Papa Jim's going to get one.
Why did you get one?
Why did I get one?
Yeah, for the animals or for the kids?
Anyone that needs it. That's what I will say. But what I will say is that head injuries, you don't want to stitch. You want to staple a head injury. Just so you know.
I know that I watched Roadhouse the other night, and he got stapled on the side. So I want to get a stapler gun now.
He's going to be reaching for the phone, and he's going to get on Amazon.
Yeah.
And by Friday, we're going to have a stapler and a staple remover a wide array of staples.
It comes in a pack. You can get them in a pack. They're very economical, and it's very smart to have, especially if you have a pig on the homestead. Because what I will say is pig skin is tough, and if they have an open wound and you need it shut, a staple gun will work because it's like a quick bloop. Now, I haven't done it on pigs yet, but I do have
Monica,
piglets.
do you have an affiliate code for it? Should we drop the affiliate code?
I do not, but someone here, you two have affiliate codes, so I can send you a link and you guys can figure it out between the two of you. You can duke it out. Eric, did you have something you wanted to add about the staples and the first aid kits here.
Well, I think it's like Papa Jim was saying, that the equipment you have, you need to practice with and not to be afraid of it. And that's kind of what I really wanted to touch on above all that is, a lot of times when you have injuries or you talk about injuries, I believe that's what's the old saying, knowledge is king. The thing is that so many people put such an emphasis, if I can get that word out, they put a huge emphasis on injury. And then they start asking the question, like, how close are you to a hospital? How long before somebody gets here? I feel like a lot of times that's what it drives fear into people to stop them from living out away from the cities. And I think that if you educate yourself and take your time to make sure you have the proper material on your homestead or on your piece of property, and this isn't necessarily just for people who live out in the boondocks, this can be for anybody. We've gotten so accustomed to every time there's an injury, anytime you get a cut, something like that, the first response is typically, oh, I need to go to the ER or I need to go to urgent care, instead of just addressing it calmly and trying to assess what actually is going on and make proper corrections as needed. And so I think that's really what I wanted to mention was, being educated and having an understanding about what's going on is what needs to really be talked about, and not to have a fear of being away from those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Now, so you guys hit on something that I kind of want to quiz Papa Jim real quick on, because being that I'm the one who's on the homestead here the majority of the time, because he's away at work a lot of the day, I know where I have a lot of our emergency supplies situated. But I want to know, if I was hurt, where's our basic first aid supplies? Can you tell us?
The basic first aid?
Basic first aid.
It's in a black box next to the...
That's my extended. Like if I just had if I needed basic first aid.
That's a good question.
Are you talking Band-Aids? Are you talking about
like Band-Aids?
Band-Aids. Where's the Band-Aids, Papa Jim?
Oh, well, you've got
you
a
could do
kit
this.
inside the bathroom.
There we go. He knows I've got a kit inside the bathroom. Right. But if there was something major, where is it?
It's in a plastic tote, or a big black plastic tote that's got all our advanced first aid stuff.
Right, and it's right by the main door. So if there is an emergency out in a pasture or in the workshop, and if somebody's even visiting, we can say, run into the house. Right there to the left of the door is a big black bin. Grab that. It has everything we need with the
yellow top.
It has everything we need in it, including something that really, I think, shocked my co-hosts the other day, because I told them that occasionally the gentlemen here on this farm, they like to participate in something that involves little freedom seeds. And if there's a mishap with little freedom seeds, what do you have available?
I have a trauma kit.
And what's one of the major things in that trauma kit?
Can I say it?
Yeah.
I have Kotex in it.
Not that.
You have a wound sucker.
Unscripted.
You have
unscripted, but yes, that's true. What does he have, Monica?
Wound sucker.
You have a sucking wound?
Oh, yeah, a chest. Yeah, I have a chest. Right, I have a chest
Papa
patch.
Jim, wound sucker.
An open flesh wound sucker. That's what we were shocked.
Oh no, I'm talking about I have Kotex in my feminine product. So if you do get it before you can get your chest patch on, you can stop the bleeding with a Kotex. I mean,
it's sterile.
It's sterile, and I've learned that back in my gun club days, probably 35 years ago.
Does anybody have an
Everybody had them out at the gun range.
Does anybody have an affiliate link for Kotex or Maxi Pads?
We'll get one.
I like mine with wounds.
I think I do over here at Ormsby Farm.
Unscripted, folks. But it's true. I used to carry a first aid kit in the car, and we still have some. And our third son teased me. I don't think he could believe it, but we stopped at a car accident one time, and I grabbed my kit and I ran out, and there was a head wound, and it was very bloody. And so I grabbed a Kotex and I slapped it on my hand and I put it to her forehead. And I felt I did a really good job, because her mother showed up, who was a nurse. She didn't move me out of the way. The paramedics showed up. They didn't move me out of the way. I did everything I needed to do because I was prepared. But then my son tells everybody, doo, 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 and there goes my mom running across the field with a tampon. And it's like, that's not what it was. It was it was so funny because he didn't know the difference. But you have to be prepared. You have to know where your items are. You have to know how to use them. And you just never know when you're going to need something like that. But Papa Jim is right. That is an excellent thing to add to your first aid kit. Cayce, I know you have tons of questions.
No, not questions. I'm just going to say on the note of tampons, actually has nothing to do with tampons, but I wanted to ask our guest host, because as we're talking about being prepared and knowing how to use certain things, this is the question that I had to look up because I did not know. But if your power, okay, this is for Eric and Papa Jim, Monica and Alicia, no answering because I've talked about this on the podcast. All right. If the power goes down today, right this moment, how many hours do you have to get your meats or Papa Jim, other stuff, out of the freezers before it goes bad? I'll give you a couple minutes to think.
Wait, I need to know, first of all, what other stuff does Papa Jim have in the freezers besides the meats?
Well,
is it like
we know that
parts?
Alicia is...
Well,
we know Alicia is...
Iowa Farm.
Carol Baskin's husband.
Hey, we had to get
Pretty
funded
sure
somehow
Papa
for
Jim
the
is not a
podcast.
vegetarian.
I'm guessing in the big freezer, you've probably got 12 hours, 24 hours.
If you leave the door closed,
If you leave the door closed.
72 hours.
Well, you're not supposed to answer it.
Oh,
Oh, Eric?
I'm guessing.
I'm guessing 72 hours.
So Eric shouldn't have listened to Alicia because that's wrong. You have 48 hours.
48
40
hours.
48
He's literally
hours.
an air conditioning guy. He's a refrigerator guy. Come on.
Well, for our listeners, like over at the Bland's house and over here at Ormsby Farm, between the two of us, we have a lot of meat. The Blands probably have more meat than I have, but I'm thinking of all the 4 different freezers that have meat at my homestead now, and what utter panic I would be in if the power goes down. You need to know these things. How long do you have to pull them out and can them in case the power goes down? At 72 hours. Oh, Lord have mercy. Papa Jim,
Yeah, so also
do
I
you
think
have,
it's important to note.
I was about to say, but Papa Jim, do you have, I know, we all know Alicia is our resident vegetarian. Do you have meats for you at the homestead?
I do. I have. Okay, so a while back, I went and our local grocery store had a deal on a bunch of steaks. And so I actually bought ribeye roast, and I had it cut up. And so we were vacuum sealing them, and one of them is called what?
Carol Baskin's husband.
She wrote on it Carol Baskin's husband.
Yes, she named it for the freezer.
Almighty.
Okay, but here's
So,
the thing,
but
Cayce. So Cayce asked that question, but here's the question for you guys too. Do you know if you open your freezer and it's been sitting for a little bit and you open that freezer and you're still pulling things out and now you're getting to the back of the freezer and it's been off for a few hours and you're getting a little nervous and things are starting to thaw out. If you have a chunk, let's say you have a roast, an eye roast, or you have Carol Baskin's husband and you pull it out, if the center of it is still frozen, but the outside is completely thawing out, like it's thawing, and you still have a little chunk of a frozen part of it, is it still good to put back in your freezer if the power comes back on?
Are you asking us to answer?
Yes.
Papa Jim, go
I-
first.
I would say if it's still frozen in the center, to refreeze it, I would not.
Cayce,
And I
what do you think?
would. Yes.
So it's actually completely safe to refreeze your meat as it begins to thaw. So if you ever encounter that, so my problem is that when I have a stand-up freezer, I have stand-up freezers, and so the door will thaw out first. So if you have to open up your freezers, grab the stuff in the door and start going through that first. Everything else inside the main part of the freezer will thaw more slowly. And then at that point, you can start going piece by piece. But if you have a portion of that meat that is still frozen, it is, according to what I've seen on the interwebs and the food safety preservation thing, as long as it's still partially frozen in some sort, you may freeze that again. Now you may get freeze burn. You may encounter some different of taste later on, but you still can put that back in the freezer. And I would definitely mark it to be used first after it. But food safety wise, when you're talking about disaster plans and food safety and things like that on the farm, that's what I would do.
Why?
And that's a way to go through it.
What's the crazy thing? Why is it always somebody's instinct? When the power goes down, because it's me too. What
To open
your
the
first
freezer?
instinct to open the freezer? Oh my God, the power's out. Let me open the freezer. Y'all, chill out, relax. Get your game plan together. And I'm saying this to kind of remind myself to do that. But, you don't want to waste Carol Baskin's husband because you have freaked out and decided to open the freezer
That's good
before.
meat.
So, yeah, it's good meat. I'm going to pass it on to the people that are actually holding it right now. And that is Alicia and Papa Jim.
We're going to get letters. Hey, so since we're talking about losing power, I'd like to know what do the gentlemen on the farm, what do they have in place in case we lose power? Papa Jim?
What do we have in place?
Yeah.
If we lose power?
Yeah.
Well, how long are we losing power for?
Depends. Go from short term to long term. We just had
Well,
a power outage.
Right. Well, short term, I would say within the first hour, I would just, depending if it was nighttime, I just get the lanterns out. We have a bunch of oil lanterns, but if I know it's going to be anything longer, I did go out and purchase a dual fuel big generator on wheels and stuff to power it, and it's 220, so we can power everything in the house and run the well pump and everything. And it runs on propane. That's what I'm running it on, is propane. And I do that because you don't have to worry about fuel residue inside the carburetor, to where if you go to use it next time, it's pretty much sure it's going to start. So that's what I do.
And we also have a blackout box so that if we have loss of power, it's got all kinds of stuff in it. I did a video on that. Everything from cooling rags to a solar powered weather radio, flashlights, little battery operated fans to keep you cool. We know that if we lose power in the wintertime, we now have a little tent that we can put on our bed to have a microclimate so we don't freeze to death. Because I get what? Frozen elbows, right, honey?
You get frozen elbows. And I was thinking another thing, too. In the wintertime, we live where it's Arctic. We could just take like our freezer stuff and move them out to containers out into the outside.
In the snow.
Because we can get up to actual temperature 30 below zero, actual temperature. So that would be another way during the wintertime, but
we have lanterns, we have headlamps, we have everything we need in a blackout box should we lose power. But then we also have tornado kits by our bed that we can grab and go in case there's a tornado. So let's spend our last few minutes talking about natural disasters. How are you prepared for a natural disaster? Monica and Eric? Eric, do you know the safety evacuation plan there in case a tornado comes towards your home? What do you guys do?
We gonna run.
Well,
I was going to say, you're going to run.
Eric's not running anywhere. Eric will go out and look for where it's coming from, and then I'll be in the room with the kids. We definitely have a, tornado safety plan here because that is one of the natural disasters we, usually are alarmed to. We don't really deal with hurricanes and things like that here anymore. I've dealt with that before when we lived in Maryland, but here it's really about the extreme weather, and the tornadoes would be one of those severe weather things. So one of the things we recently had to deal with too was hail. That was a new severe weather thing that we didn't have to really deal with too much. Hail was more of the Dallas area, but we dealt with some big hail this spring, and I will say it scared the bejeebies out of my 9-year-old, so much so that now whenever we are supposed to get severe weather, he needs to look at my phone. He needs to watch the weather coming in, and he needs to be able to know where it's coming from to get himself grounded, because that makes him feel better. So part of our disaster plan when it comes to severe weather is giving ourselves knowledge. Really, knowledge is power when it comes to part of your disaster plan. And that's part of those things that we talk about. Eric, what else would we do in case of a tornado? Anything that you know of? I mean, do you have anything you want to add to that?
I think just in general, going back to before the conversation of tornado came up, but just natural, not
national disasters.
Not national.
We're living that right now, actually, a national disaster. We're discussing natural disasters.
Natural disasters.
Yes.
Can I get an amen?
Look, Papa Jim's ready to amen us right there. Look.
Now, I was just wondering, do you guys, where you live, do you guys have a basement?
No, they don't believe in basements where we live. And we don't have a storm shelter either. What we do have is my bedroom closet that we hide in.
Right, the most interior. Right.
Yes,
and it's going to be a bathroom.
So yeah, it's a large walk-in closet inside of our bathroom. It has it's the most interior, one of the most interior rooms, as well as no outside windows, no outside walls. It is completely interior. And we have another bathroom that my other kids will go to if we need to, but we have plans, especially when Eric is back here snickering, but whenever we have severe weathers, because severe weather really likes to decide to come at nighttime here. The best time for tornado warnings in our area, they like to come between, 9 p.m. and like 5 a.m. Basically the time when we want our children to be away from us in their own bedroom sleeping. But unfortunately for us and them is they have this wonderful, amazing bedroom that's upstairs, the top floor of the house. So therefore I make them sleep downstairs. Eric is fine with them sleeping wherever, but I don't feel comfortable with them sleeping upstairs because look, mama's slow. Mama's getting old. She don't run up them steps like she used to. Well, I never used to run up the steps really, but I don't run up the steps to go get my children. I avoid the possibility of having to breathe heavy and run up the steps. So I make them sleep downstairs at night. And I kind of prequel the disaster to that. So, but yeah, I think that's one of the big things for us when it comes to natural, not national disasters here.
Right. So I want to share something. So we've been out here for 11 years, 10 years, just a little over 10 years. And last week, I have about a 35-mile one-way drive to work. Coming home, I got to see, and I know I'm kind of excited, I shouldn't be, but I got to see my first tornado. Full on, with ground debris coming up, I got to see it. I have it on video on my camera, or on my phone. But anyway, yeah. So I'm always at work or whatever, I'm always somewhere, but this was the first time I was driving that I actually got to see it. And it was actually falling along the road, probably about 5 to 7 miles away from me. I got to see it. So
it ended up being, it did some damage around here. It was a nice little tornado. I've seen a few since we've moved here, and that just prompted me to put together our tornado kit, our grab and go tornado kit, and have things at the ready. We did something when we had Ann Dale on a couple of episodes ago, and I want to do this between Papa Jim, Eric, and Cayce. I want to do a real quick round robin. I want to know what is the most important thing. What is the most important thing? And you guys, when you give an answer, it can't be an answer that's already been given. Eric's already thinking. Whether you are in earthquake country, tornado country, landslide country, hurricane country, blizzard country, if you had a grab and go emergency kit, what is your go-to item? We're going to start with Eric. What's going to be in your kit?
I'm just curious why I keep getting picked first to answer all these questions.
You're lucky.
I mean, wait, did he say I'm her lackey?
You're lucky.
I think that's exactly what he said.
So what you're asking me is to give a one-word answer? Is that what you're asking?
One item. What item would you have in an emergency grab and go? Like if you had a tornado right now and you had to go into that inner room, what is in that room that's preparing you for that tornado? Or what would you grab in a grab and go? We have grab and goes because we grab it and go to the basement. So what is one thing that you want to let our listeners know you should have to be prepared for a natural disaster?
Oh, well, if we're running for our life like that, my first option is going to be grabbing my Bible and running. That's what I'm grabbing.
I'm grabbing my shoes because I know Eric already has a Bible. So I'm grabbing my shoes just
So
because I'm practical too.
Can I get one of your shoes and you wear one?
Because I don't need to take the actual physical Bible because I have enough stored up here to get me through if I need to. But in the meantime, I'm going to be having my shoes so I can run through debris if it takes my house down.
Eric wants one of the shoes. You both be hopping. Cayce?
Well, I just want to say, to just outdo Eric, that I already have a Bible in my tornado area, so I don't need to grab that. But one thing that I would definitely grab, and I probably need to have my Bible for this answer, is I would have the solar charger for the cell phone, because I want to make sure that I'm able to get in contact with people on Instagram or Facebook, or you notice how I answered Instagram, Facebook, and not actually calling people. But they have those chargers that you can charge, or it's solar panel that you can charge your phone in. And I've learned, because we here at Ormsby Farm are the same as the Blands. We're in zone 8A, and we get tornadoes, of course, at night when everything is supposed to be asleep. And when we go in our tornado area, there is no cell phone service. Or cell phone charge, there's no plugs. So I would say grabbing something that I'm able to charge or keep my phone, laptop, iPad, whatever it is, charged. That's the first thing that I grab. So, mic drop.
He's a social media influencer. He needs his electricity.
Right.
Plus the Bible.
Yeah, mine. I have like a weather radio with a light on it, and then you can crank it by hand, and it winds up. Because my first one was already.
Wait, you said crank it by hand, Papa Jim? Like what? Like for real? Crank it?
You pull a lever out the side of it and you crank it up and it charges it.
Yes, you should put a code up for that on our podcast.
I was about to say, do we have
really
an affiliate code? I need
it's
one.
I'm
really
sure that
good.
Country Mama can put one out.
Yeah.
And but the very first thing, which was already spoken and I can't say, was Monica said, shoes. Make sure your feet are protected. And what's
Opposite end, make sure your head's protected. Papa Jim and I went to a thrift store and we bought bicycle helmets for 25 cents a piece. And so if we're running to the basement and there's going to be a tornado, we don't want a beam falling on our head or something falling off of a shelf hitting us in the head. We don't want to have a head injury. So we have helmets. Where did Eric go? Because he's up next.
Oh, we doing another round robin?
3 rounds.
Oh my gosh, another thing. What are you taking?
3 rounds, because you guys have to think.
Well,
You're not just grabbing one. You have to know what to have.
Well, I will say that our safety shelter thing is already in our closet, so we already have the shoes in there anyway. So I probably didn't even need to bring that. But we do have helmets, so I already had to say that too. But what else would you bring in there with us, Eric?
I'd probably bring a survival knife. Something where you can create fire.
Yeah, because with those survival knives, we usually have the flint and everything with it. So that's really great. I would say along with that, I would make sure we have our whistle available, a way to make noise. Because if something happens, we have extra things, the blankets and all that stuff already in our closet. But it would definitely be, I need to make sure we have some way of making noise. And I can't guarantee my 7-year-old's going to be loud enough. So
maybe a miniature first aid kit.
Cayce,
I want to add to that. If you're going to be,
I'll throw it to Cayce next, but I do want to say one thing that most people don't think of is if you are going to have your room that you go to or the basement that you're going to go to, one thing that I know exactly where it is in a corner, unless it's been moved, you need to have a pry bar. Because if there's a collapse and you've got big pieces of wood pinning somebody down and you can't move them or lift them, a pry bar is needed to move some of those larger chunks so that you can crawl out with your shoes on your feet, get out of that situation. One more thing before I go to Cayce. If you go to Wally World or any of the sporting goods stores, you can find a lanyard to wear around your neck. It has a whistle. It has a strobe light. So let's say you're going to lose consciousness. You can hit the strobe light. That way, if you're under debris, it will strobe, and as your rescuers are trying to find you, they'll see that strobe light go off. You can blow the whistle if you're still conscious, or you can use it as just a regular light up stick for seeing where you are in case you lose power. Casey, what's something that you're going to want to have in case of an emergency?
Well, let's see. Y'all are saying all these responsible things, and I guess I have to
If
be
he
that
says
host.
chips, if he says chips or wine,
No, actually, I was not going to say wine. Let me tell you, as Monica said, our area is already pre-prepped, so we have a lot of the stuff that really we need in the area. But Monica told a story a couple podcasts ago, and I binge bought and put them in the area. I love spicy hot Cheetos, and she was talking about Peter, her pig, and I put hot Cheetos in our tornado area because now our area is oh gosh, guys, help me out. I'm talking husbands, guys. It's those
it's a
big
container.
things.
It's a storage
It's a
container bin, and I
storage
love it.
container, yes. And it's completely prepped. We have cots. We have all of the stuff that we need in it now. It's actually different from when Alicia and Papa Jim saw it the first time. But I was like, okay, when you're in this area, what are two things you need? And I'm not going to say wine because they're expecting me to say wine, but hot Cheetos was the next thought. And so I decided to go ahead and buy a couple bags and just put it in there. And because of all the preservatives, they will last a long time in the storage space. So my answer is hot Cheetos, thanks to Peter the pig.
Well, he did his job then. He reminded you of what's important in life. That's good snacks.
And Casey?
Correct.
Casey, did you, so can you see how your views have changed from when you first purchased your property and you were thinking about getting rid of your container?
Yes. No, I have noticed so many comments that are like, oh gosh, don't get rid of that. Don't get rid of that. And I was like, it's so ugly. But now we're going on, I'm almost year 2 now. I think I'm mid years. But I've noticed how important it is because we do. I mean, I'm zoned 8A. We're kind of on the same kind of playing field as the Blands for gardening zones and weather. We get the super hot, humid that just randomly likes to turn into tornadoes at 9 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock at night. And you have to be prepared. So I'm glad that I didn't get rid of him. So yes, I have noticed that there is a change that people are like, okay, Casey is not crazy. Thankfully, he did not sell off his storage space.
I think that, looking at everything we've talked about, though, and I don't want to cut our round robin short, but I think it's almost time to wrap up. But what I will say is I think we've done a really good job overall discussing all the different hazards, discussing how to maybe minimize the potential for disasters to happen. Because sometimes you have natural disasters that you can't avoid. But there are things that it's getting spicy. But we can really minimize the potential for big time issues here on the homestead if you're aware of your situation, if you have plans in place, escape plans, just those little things to know and to be ready. And that's really important in all of it, is just to be ready and to be aware. And you can't plan for everything. Like you can't possibly plan for a truck running away from you. You shouldn't have planned for that. But she needed to make a quick call, and she did. Thankfully, her body took a quick call and made that call for her because her mind was like, chase it. But her body said, I can't. And there are times that happens for us, that things happen out of our control.
Do we do a sound effect here?
Where she's like, like that when she's not. The icy ground caught her fall. But that's the thing. She couldn't have prepared for that. There's no way to prepare for the great chase. But what you can do is know how to handle yourself after, know how to kind of take care of those things, to be aware of how to deal with all of it. So I think that's important, is kind of being prepared with a plan, knowing your situation, knowing your animals, knowing yourself, and knowing where to and how to kind of deal with those situations that come your way. I think that's really important. So on that note, don't forget to check out our great sponsor, Cayce. And, does anybody have anything else they want to say?
Yeah, I have one more thing I want to say, especially in this time of year. exposure, sun exposure, protecting ourselves. That's very important because we just went through this at work. Heat stroke. We've had some days that were where I work in the upper 90s with high humidity, and we went through the signs of what exposure to heat and heat exhaustion and then heat stroke and all that stuff. And it's just stay hydrated, keep yourself outside, keep yourself covered as much as possible, that kind of stuff. So I just want to throw that out there.
And I think it's funny because I know the Blands down in Texas are going in the 90s.
Yeah, it was like 106.
In the hundreds.
I think it's been in 100. It's gonna be in the hundreds all the way through next week.
We
And
got
I think Monday.
102 today. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think on our hottest day this last week, our heat index was 109 or 100.
109, yeah.
Yeah,
But we're talking actual temperature here.
I know, but with our heat index,
ridiculous.
with the amount of humidity we have in the Midwest,
So
it's deadly.
when we were in Southern California in the desert, it was 115 to 120, dry heat, not like here. You sweat more here to places
you didn't know you could sweat.
I'm telling you.
So yes, be aware of what's happening weather-wise. Make sure you
Hydrate.
protect yourself. Hydrate, shade. Know the signs of heat stroke and
Did
heat
you say shade?
exhaust. Did I say shade? Stay in the shade, not shave. Do that too if you need to. But on that note, I'd like to thank the husbands for showing up and sharing a little bit of what they do for safety on the homestead. It's a really great thing to know and share. And just remember that you have to think outside the box, expect the unexpected, and you'll be okay. But I'll tell you what you know to expect is that when our podcasts drop on Monday, make sure you check out our radio show, Hey Y'all Hey. On Tuesdays, we go live on YouTube and on our Facebook channel. So make sure you check those out. And another thing that you can count on is Kelzyme. So I'm going to sign us out until we see you again. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. Have a blessed week. And bye, y'all. Bye.